39. Tonight will be the first time that this particular booster is flying from Pad 39A. All 7 of this booster's previous flights lifted off just down the road at Space Launch Complex 40. Now, Falcon 9 stands 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft, and there are 9 M1D engines on the first stage, which is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle there. The 9 Merlin engines on the first stage accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space. About 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage separates from the rest of the rocket and begins making its way back to Earth to land on our recovery vessel, Of Course I Still Love You, as you see on your screen. Now, while Falcon 9 is named for the 9 engines on the first stage, there are actually 10 engines on the rocket. The Merlin vacuum engine, or MVac, is what powers the second stage of Falcon 9 to its targeted orbit. The MVac can generate about 220,500 pounds of thrust at full power and can be restarted multiple times to place different payloads into different orbits. Tonight, we are flying 60 Starlink satellites, which are safely enclosed in the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that pointed structure you see at the very top of the rocket. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we no longer need the fairing, so we jettison it as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. Today will be the first time that we are reusing one of our fairing halves for the 4th time. The other half will be flying for the 3rd time. Our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Navigator are currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean and will pull the fairing halves from the water upon landing. And with that, let's check in to see how the countdown is progressing.
We are just under 8.5 minutes until liftoff, and leading into tonight's launch, the chief engineer held a technical poll at the T-1 hour mark, and then the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at the T-38-minute mark. Since then, Falcon 9 has been loading propellant since the T-35-minute mark. The vehicle uses 2 types of propellant, a fuel and an oxidizer. For fuel, we use a refined form of kerosene called RP1, and for its oxidizer, we use super chilled liquid oxygen. We also refer to it as LOX. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and nearly fully loaded on the first stage. And as for liquid oxygen, we're loading it right now on both stages. We also load helium to the vehicle, and that began before the webcast went live. We'll continue to top it off until about 1.5 minutes before launch. And we use this helium to maintain pressure in the tanks as propellant is consumed throughout the mission. In about 25 seconds, engine chill will begin. This is where we allow a small amount of super chilled liquid oxygen to flow into the Merlin engine's turbopumps prior to the full flow of LOX to avoid any thermal shocks to the system. Around the T-5 minute and 13-second mark, checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators will begin. This is also known as the engine wiggle test. We'll initiate these slight movements to make sure that the guidance hardware is a go for flight. The first stage engines also perform the same exact engine wiggle test, and this happens just seconds before ignition. The vehicle is healthy. We are currently working no issues. The range is standing by and currently green for liftoff. The weather is also green for today's mission. All systems continue to be go for a liftoff at 3:24 a.m. Eastern Time.
Now, Starlink was designed to help meet the growing need for truly high-speed, low-latency broadband to underserved and unserved areas. One key advantage of Starlink is the ability to deploy the system quickly. The Starlink kit contains everything that a user needs to get connected to the internet, and once they have a kit in hand, users can be connected in a matter of minutes.
Stage 1 RP1.
For many communities that historically have had poor or non-existent access to the internet, the impacts of the current pandemic have made day-to-day life even more challenging. One such community is the Wise County Public School District in rural Virginia. Now, when COVID forced schools to close and resort to remote education, the community did not have the connectivity it needed to support distance learning for its students. According to a survey conducted by the school district, 40% of teachers and families in the area had limited to no access to internet. In December, the Wise County Public School District announced its plan to provide some families in the area with free Starlink service to promote remote learning. In January, we deployed the Starlink units to the community, and now over 40 homes are now connected with service. We are currently delivering beta service both domestically and internationally, and the team will continue to push towards near global coverage of the populated world in 2021. If you're interested in bringing Starlink to your home or your community, you can head over to starlink.com for more information.
We are currently 5 minutes from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. We're currently waiting for the transport erector, or TE, to retract away from Falcon 9. The transport erector is that white painted structure right next to the vehicle. In about 40 seconds, the clamp arms at the top of the vehicle will begin to open, and then the strong back will begin to recline away around the T-minus 3 minute and 39 second mark, and it will recline away about 2 degrees from Falcon 9 to its pre-launch position.
Strong backflow has begun.
And you're hearing the callouts that we're beginning that process. The strong back won't fully reach that pre-launch position until about the T-minus 3 minute and 4 second mark. The transport erector has a few jobs. It provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. And on screen right now, you can see the clamp arms are starting to retract away from, to open up and prepare the transport erector to recline away from Falcon 9. This entire process should take about another 40 seconds or so. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. The first stage should finish propellant loading around the T-minus 3 minute mark, and the second stage should finish around the T-minus 2 minute mark. And there goes the strong back, beginning to recline away from Falcon 9 to its pre-launch position about 2 degrees from the vehicle. And as we get closer to T0 at T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 is in startup. And this means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. We'll then light the Merlin engines around the T-minus 2 second mark. We use TTEB as our ignition fluid, and when it mixes with oxygen, it burns a green colored flame. We then allow the fuel into the thrust chamber, and the engine comes to power for liftoff at T0. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather, again, remains good, and the range is also green for launch. And if you're just joining us, this is the 20th Starlink mission for SpaceX and the 6th mission overall in 2021. In just a few seconds here, we should hear the call out that LOX loading has completed on the second stage, and that will wrap up propellant loading for the entire vehicle for today's mission.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And there is that call out. You can start to hear some hissing and notice some white clouds around Falcon 9. That is normal for us at this stage in the countdown. We are venting liquid oxygen through the transport erector lines, and we'll continue to do so all the way down until T0.
Falcon 9's in startup.
We are in startup. Both stages are now beginning to pressurize for launch. In a few seconds here, we should hear the launch director give the final go for launch.
Falcon 9, Starlink, LD's go for launch.
And there's the final go for launch. Let's listen in to terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites into orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
T plus 40 seconds into flight. It is dark, but we can definitely hear Falcon 9. We have successfully lifted off from pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites into orbit. Right now, we're currently throttling down the engines in preparation for max Q. That is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure, where we'll experience the largest structural load on the vehicle